All right, welcome back. Hey, the phone number here, 312-642-5600 if you want to weigh in. You know what? We've been talking about the security down at the DNC and what to expect. I want to just give you a little bit of a report from WGN.
Given the uncertainty surrounding next week's convention, businesses are taking steps to prevent potential threats to their property, like looting or vandalism, by adding protection.
We've had zero indication that there would be any protections down in the Loop.
That's why the owner of Sid Jerome Menswear is reinforcing his downtown store by covering up the windows with plywood in anticipation of possible civil unrest and violent protests that may come from the Democratic National Convention next week.
We know from past experiences that something could ensue, so we wanted to be proactive and get ahead of it.
The men's clothing shop is located on Madison Street, which is down the block from City Hall and along the main route to the United Center, where significant gatherings are expected. The owner hopes these measures will be sufficient to prevent potential damages and avoid a repeat of past incidents.
We've been a victim on 4 separate occasions where we've been vandalized or looted for, various incidents or events that happened in the city.
They're not alone in their concerns. The Chicago Board of Services says their crews have been actively boarding up storefronts over the past few days to mitigate losses and destruction.
Yeah, so it's nothing new in Chicago, actually. You've had a number of stores had to take on additional security measures because you've had these gangs of just teenagers running around trying to loot. So this is not new, but apparently with the DNC in town, they're doing additional stuff. I was reading from a Chicago CBS report. With street closures and restrictions already in place at both the United Center and McCormick Place ahead of the DNC, new security measures that went into effect this weekend have left parts of the downtown area in a state of lockdown. Residents and businesses were still trying to navigate the new restrictions on Sunday after large security fences went up along sidewalks in parts of the Loop, Gold Coast, and Magnificent Mile, with a handful of downtown streets closed off. Unlike those closures announced in advance at the United Center and McCormick Place, the new restrictions downtown were not formally announced until Saturday morning after they were already in place, blindsiding many who live and work in the area. So all of a sudden, they just decide they have to do more security. So here to talk about this and much, much more is a good friend, Robert Girardi. You've heard him on the show before because he's also a Civil War historian, and I think that's really his passion and his vocation. But actually, what he did for his job was he was a former homicide detective with the Chicago Police Department. And so, Rob, thank you so much for joining me tonight. And what do you say? I mean, is it lockdown in Chicago now?
Well, it sounds like that might be a surprise that they didn't want to telegraph, which would uncharacteristically be a smart thing that the city did. But I commend the store owners for being proactive in boarding up their own stores and protecting their own property, because the city has failed to do that in recent years with when there's unrest or demonstrations, so-called peaceful protests going on. But I think they're ready for the convention as best as can be, the police department, but I'm not sure that the city is responsible for a lot of the measures that are being taken.
Oh, very good point. Obviously, store owners have seen in the past how the city has failed to protect during the summer of riots of 2020, where things got out of hand and literally people were burned and looted out of things. There's no guarantee that they'll be there. The police will be there when you need them because they are stretched so thin. Do you know the order of magnitude of the additional forces that have been called in to help with the DNC?
Well, all week, for the rest of the week, beginning yesterday, all Chicago police officers' days off are canceled. They're working 12-hour shifts in uniform. And so, again, the city's burning people out at the cost of additional security. But in light of the implications, it's probably on this occasion the right thing to do, and they're doing it. The problem is there isn't enough manpower in the police department. It's under strength from when I worked, and they're doing the best they can with what they've got. I don't think there'll be any problem at McCormick Place or the United Center proper, but the periphery might be a different matter.
So what about those protest march, route that they have set aside and said, okay, here's your route, here's where you can protest? Do you imagine that those will be lined with police or sporadically lined with police, or what's the plan there?
Well, I know that they have inner and outer perimeters established at the United Center and at McCormick Place. So the interior lines are going to be unbreachable, hopefully. The outer lines, peaceful protest is not what happens in Chicago. And so I think the people that deviate from the approved routes will probably be given too much leeway until they get out of hand. And then how the police are able to respond, we will see in real time. They do have plans in place, but whether or not those plans are going to be effective remains to be seen.
Well, maybe you could talk to me a little bit more in depth like that, because Mayor Johnson and his chief of police literally said, we're not going to get anything get out of hand. As soon as we see a problem, we're going to slap it down. What does that mean? What action would they physically take? And, we all know how quickly these things can go awry, because you can be overwhelmed by masses of protesters, instigators, you name it, people who just like the excitement of the fight. And before you know it, you've lost control. So how do they plan to maintain control?
And that's it. It depends. I mean, I've been in situations where when the police take control, the problem doesn't get out of hand. When the police fail to take control, you see the chaos that we've seen of late. Now, the current mayor, I'm going to try to be nice. I think he's guilty of wishful thinking. We've seen him in practice when he allowed the pro-terrorist protesters shut down expressways in the route to O'Hare and Lakeshore Drive, et cetera, multiple times since last October. That's the mayor. The police department, well, again, they're undermanned. They've called for outside jurisdictions to bring additional outside of Chicago officers to Chicago. But my understanding is that the mayor has not agreed to allow them police powers. So I don't understand what the purpose of bringing outside police law enforcement officers to Chicago if they can't act as law enforcement officers. And I'm pretty sure the mayor doesn't want to indemnify them and have to cover them in the event of civil litigation.
Well, it's likely the case. It all comes down to money and, people suing for police, assumed police brutality, which may or may not even occur. It just may be their perception, but those lawsuits get settled and they cost taxpayers lots of money. I mean, I can't understand if you have a licensed police officer that you're not. Okay, here's a question. What's J.B. Pritzker's responsibility in all of this? Couldn't he indemnify them for actions needed to be taken? If they are a trained and sworn police officer in accordance with our police standards.
All police officers in the state of Illinois are licensed by the state. So
can
he do it? I don't know that he can make the city responsible. So then the state would have to give them that additional authority in Chicago. I don't know if that's ever been done or if it can be done. I don't know. But that's one way. But I don't think any Democrat elected official is going to take the responsibility to do that, because it's going to make them look bad, because the people who are going to be protesting are basically just arms of that political party.
Okay, so there's this other thing that may be going on at the same time. You may have your just average street criminal and criminal gangs out there plying their trade to an unsuspecting audience, or an audience that is, feeling comfortable because there's ostensibly fences around, and so they think they've, get a false sense of security. Do you think that may be more of an issue than protesters themselves getting out of hand?
Well, I think they're going to have a field day. They're going to certainly sense an opportunity, but it's not going to happen within the defended perimeters. It's going to happen outside of those. I don't think there's going to be a problem like in the United Center or in McCormick Place, but around there, people going to and fro or trying to see whatever they think are the highlights of the city of Chicago at this point.
Yeah, maybe that Planned Parenthood mobile clinic is what they want to get to, and they might be standing in line for their services, and who knows, they could get mugged.
Well, I'll be sardonic or incorrect. If those had been there in the 1996 convention, where I actually had to work security at the United Center with the Secret Service, if they had been in place then, that whole generation of people creating problems now would never have been born.
Oh, well, there you go.
But
yeah, I'm all for the vasectomy. If you're literally going to come to Chicago and decide, oh, hey, you know what? I'm going to go visit the DNC and, might as well get my free vasectomy. I mean, if that's how you plan, good. I think I want you to get that.
That's long-term security.
Oh, gosh.
But you have to survive another generation of that. I was actually had occasion to drive through the downtown area past McCormick Place yesterday and could see some of this stuff being put into place. And so I fear that the city will not back police officers who have to respond to real-time destruction because the city is seeing fit to set up more than a dozen locations for people to come in and register complaints against the police.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No. COPA has been given a free hand, so they're going to have a bunch of stations set up around the area so anybody that gets a broken nail because the police arrested them for throwing a bomb will be able to file a protest. And because of legislation signed by the aforementioned governor and our current attorney general in Illinois, they don't have to have sworn affidavits when they file these things. That's why I worry about the officers on the front lines. I've been there. I was there for the NATO summit. I was there for the 96 convention, which was peaceful. But I don't think the city is being allowed to work with the Secret Service the way that they did in 96. And so I think the city's going to stand there and try to absorb as many punches as possible. Other agencies are going to provide the real security for the dignitaries of the convention.
Right.
The streets, I'm afraid, will be thrown to the wolves. In the NATO summit, we were told they had me working as a detective. They had us working in uniform, 12-hour shifts, and we were told in antiquated riot gear. They gave me a new shield for a helmet that was obsolete, and told not to break the line. If they're only damaging property, let them do that. Now, hopefully, the message that's being delivered now in the news conference they held last week was they're not going to allow that to happen. I have to see it. Doubting Thomas is a true believer compared to me on that regard.
Wow. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on and just weighing in and letting our audience know your experience and what to expect and all these rules that really prevent police officers from doing their job and make them hesitate before they are actually going to protect property or other people.
Well, it's a question. The police they want to do their job.
Sure.
Are they going to be allowed to?
That's
right. That's a different thing. It's very demoralizing to stand there and be given, in my opinion, an unlawful order not to uphold the oath you took.
Yeah. All right. That's all we got time for. I got a hard break. Rob, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have you back on with more Civil War history because I love talking to you about that. Thank you so much for joining me on The Real Story with Jeannie Ives. We'll be right back.